What if I told you that every time your horse snorts, it's not just clearing its nose? It's actually sending you a detailed message about how it feels, what it wants, and even what it thinks about you? Picture this. You're standing in a peaceful pasture, watching horses graze under the afternoon sun. Suddenly, one lets out a loud, forceful snort, that familiar puff of air through flared nostrils. Most of us would assume it's just dust or a simple bodily function. But what if that sound was actually as meaningful as a human sentence? What if horses have been talking to us this whole time, and we just didn't know how to listen? For centuries, we've interpreted horse sounds through our human lens. Whinnies mean hello, neighs mean excitement, and snorts. Well, we assumed they were just nose noises. But recent research has uncovered something astonishing. Snorts aren't random. They're a sophisticated form of communication that reveals a horse's emotional state, social intentions, and even their perception of safety. Let's start with what a snort actually is. Physically, it's a burst of air forced through the nostrils, often accompanied by a distinctive vibrating sound. But emotionally, it's far more complex. Think of it like this. When you sigh deeply, it could mean relief, frustration, or exhaustion, depending on the context. Horses use snorts in similarly nuanced ways. The most groundbreaking discovery came from researchers who spent months observing horses in different environments, from tense riding arenas to relaxed pastures. They recorded thousands of snorts and noticed clear patterns. Horses snorted most frequently during calm, positive situations. When grazing with companions, during gentle grooming sessions, or when exploring new but safe environments, these were snort hotspots. But here's where it gets really interesting. The snorts changed depending on what the horse was experiencing. In stressful situations, like veterinary exams or unfamiliar trails, snorts became rare. Instead, horses would hold their breath, tense their bodies, and communicate anxiety through other signals. The snort, it turned out, was primarily a signal of relaxation and contentment. Now, let's break down the different types of snorts and what they might mean. The most common is the contentment snort, usually shorter, softer, and often repeated. You'll hear this when a horse is enjoying a good scratch, settling into their stall for the night, or greeting a trusted human. It's essentially their way of saying, "I'm comfortable here." Then there's the alert snort, sharper, louder, and usually singular. This happens when something catches their attention but doesn't necessarily scare them. Maybe they spotted a deer in the distance or heard an unusual sound. It's not panic. It's more like, "Hey, did you see that?" Followed by curious investigation rather than flight. The social snort is particularly fascinating. Researchers noticed that horses often snort when approaching each other after separation, during mutual grooming sessions, or when establishing peaceful contact. It seems to function as a social lubricant, a way of saying, "I come in peace," or "we're good here." Perhaps the most surprising finding concerns how horses use snorts with humans. In one remarkable study, horses snorted significantly more when being handled by people they knew and trusted compared to strangers. They'd even direct their snorts toward their favorite humans, almost like targeted communication. Some horses developed distinct snort patterns with specific people, almost like having a private language with their caretaker. This brings us to the physiological aspect. Why snorting feels good to horses. The physical act of snorting actually stimulates the release of endorphins, creating a mild, pleasurable sensation. It's self-reinforcing. Horses snort when they feel good, and the snorting makes them feel even better. It's their version of a contented sigh after a good meal or a stretch upon waking. What's truly mind-blowing is how consistent these patterns are across different horse populations. From racing thoroughbreds to therapy ponies, from wild mustangs to dressage champions, the snort language appears universal. The context might change, but the fundamental meaning remains. Relaxation, social connection, and positive emotional states. This understanding transforms how we interpret our interactions with horses. That snort your horse gives when you enter the barn. It might be their way of saying they're happy to see you. The soft puff during a trail ride, they're telling you they feel safe and content. Even the absence of snorts becomes meaningful. Prolonged silence might indicate stress or discomfort. The implications for horse training and welfare are profound. Instead of waiting for obvious signs of distress, we can now listen for the presence or absence of snorts as an early emotional indicator. More snorts generally mean happier horses. Fewer snorts might suggest we need to reassess their environment, handling, or training methods. This research is still evolving, of course. Scientists are now investigating whether individual horses have unique snort signatures that their herd mates recognize. They're exploring whether snorts can indicate specific needs, like hunger, thirst, or the desire for social contact. Some researchers are even developing technology to decode these sounds automatically, potentially creating tools that let us understand our horses' emotional states in real time. What we're discovering is that horses have been communicating with us all along. We just needed to learn their language. The humble snort, once dismissed as meaningless, turns out to be a window into the equine mind. It reveals creatures capable of complex emotional states, social intelligence, and even targeted communication with their human partners. The next time you hear that familiar puff, remember, you're not just hearing a bodily function. You're hearing a conversation. You're witnessing an ancient form of communication that connects horses to each other, and now, potentially, to us. What surprising communication signals have you noticed in your own pets? Share your stories in the comments below. Your observation might help us understand animals better.